This is episode 76 of Art Talk, and today I have a very special guest for a conversation, our artist James Early. This summer I met James at the other art fair and I was stunned by his borders and especially because of his topic. James started in 2015 with his powerful and emotional studies of homeless people, victims of war, and religious martyrs. This work took him to another level in the art world, and he was nominated by the British Portrait Award,
That's right.
the Royal Institute of Oil Painters, and the Royal Institute of Portrait Painters, culminating in his work being displayed in the iconic, famous Mall Galleries in the heart of London. A great gallery, by the way. James was selected in 2019 to show his work at the prestigious London Biennale, and James has been described by the German Kunst Heute publication, as well as the International Contemporary Art Curators, as one of the most significant artists in the world today. He says that he paints the invisible visible. Welcome, James, and
Thank
thank you
you.
for being my guest
Well,
today.
it's good to
I'm
speak to you.
honored.
It's my honor, really. I'm really honored to be with you, and I'm looking forward to it.
Great. So you write that you always wanted to paint a homeless person without really knowing why. That some answers can't be answered, yet your work is internationally highly acclaimed. So what are your thoughts about homelessness and how it only seems to get worse?
Um, if I've often been asked this question, and I always say, if an alien came down to the world today, and that alien saw a homeless person sat on the streets, and then a few blocks away saw a beautiful house owned by a billionaire who's got so much money they haven't even got the time in the world to actually spend it, they would probably think that something is not right. They would think that this world's it's not a great place. According to Oxfam, the richest 1% bag nearly twice as much wealth as the rest of the world put together in the
Mm-hmm.
last 2 years, which is
Mm-hmm.
incredible.
Yeah.
So this, in my eyes, what I've seen traveling the world is it's the system, the economic system, which, as you know, is capitalism, which demands aggression,
Mm-hmm.
demands greed, and actually encourages it, has caused this massive explosion of homeless people. The pace of life that I see, which is so fast now,
Yeah.
I think it also has caused a huge mental health issue in the world today. People just can't live in the moment anymore. They're demanded to be moving all the time. And I see so many homeless people on the streets that are homeless because of mental health issues.
Yeah.
So I feel the only way that this is actually going to improve, the situation is going to get better, is if there's a new system in place, a new economic system in place that actually values human life and empathy and love rather than profit, and gives a fundamental human right. People that should be homed. Everyone has a house. Everyone
Yeah.
deserves a house,
Yeah.
and that should be a fundamental human right. So that's how I
Yeah.
see homelessness at the moment.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I see it getting worse everywhere I go,
Yeah. I've
apart from
seen it
some
too.
places.
Yeah. Because when I was in London, I saw them in tents in the bush.
Yeah.
And that is devastating. I mean, children. And you're right. I agree totally with you. There are just a few people who understand the money game, the
Mm.
financial game. They
Mm.
own the banks because banks are not a utility for all of us. They are a private business.
Yeah.
Even the central bank is not a central bank, it's a private business.
Yeah.
And they know how to invest and they know the money game, the game that nobody learns in school.
Yeah.
So the majority is running the rat race. Um, and when and I noticed that energy is going up in January, exactly at the moment where people need the heat. But in the summer, it goes down because the companies can't earn on it. And I have like, it's getting ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's getting ridiculous.
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And seeing people on the street is awful. And I have to say that I have done my utmost to by buying some extra food and just give it. The little things you can do. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. And the sad thing is I went to New York recently, and I learned that the average age of a homeless person in New York is 7 years old.
Yeah,
So that is mind blowing.
Yeah.
And you know, this is the richest New York, the richest city and the richest country in the history of the world.
Yeah. Well, so is London.
Right.
Yeah. 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 And you paint them, and I've seen that. Amazing. Those people, their self-esteem must go up so much when you show them the painting, because nobody thinks that they are worthy enough to be seen, let alone be painted, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I see it's difficult really because I value everyone, and everyone deserves a portrait. Everyone does. And there is this image of homeless people as they feel shame. I don't sense that. I don't sense that. So when I see a homeless person, I see someone who has got problems, but they're fighting. You know, they're living in a tough environment, but they're still fighting, and I admire that. So the pride is all mine when I show a portrait to one of my sitters who are homeless. You know, it's my honor, my privilege, and they deserve that more than anyone, really, because of their hope, their resilience, their fight, and yet most of the time their empathy as well. You know, I've for example, there's so many stories I can give you when I do a commission, when I actually paint a homeless person, and I'll say to them at the end of the painting when it's being sold, I say, well, I'll give you the funds. You know, I can give you the funds, or let me know how I can do that. And most of the time they say to me, I don't want it, just give it to a charity. And to me, that's incredible. In fact, if you go to my website, there's a guy called Dave who I painted, a homeless guy, and
I've seen
it was covered by the BBC, the story of me painting Dave. And he was another guy who didn't want any money. He just wanted all the proceeds of that commission or that painting to go to a charity, which to me is amazing.
Yeah, because the charity can do so much more for more people.
Yeah.
So yeah, then you can ask yourself, where's the sociality within people?
Yeah. Yeah.
Clearly. And all the awards you won, the international exhibitions in the most famous museums and galleries. I mean, your work must have touched so many people. Do you deeply believe within that you bring that much needed awareness enough that one time things will change?
It's a tough question, but I have to do it. You know, I have to paint. I have to bring awareness to all these issues. You know, if I don't do something, if I don't, for example, as well as painting, I try to go on, for example, the situation in Gaza at the moment. So I go on the marches there. If I don't go on a march, if I don't write to my MP, if I don't partake in the BDS movement, then I'm complicit. So if we don't do these things, then we are silently being complicit. And I can't do that. So I look at the situation in South Africa, the apartheid in South Africa. Okay, now 2 countries backed that apartheid regime up, and that was the US and the UK, and they did that right until the very end. And there were two things that stopped that backing. And one was movement of the people. The
Mm-hmm.
people got to the streets. There was a huge movement against the apartheid regime. Another thing which is less well known is the role Cuba took.
Mm-hmm.
They sent an army over to Angola to fight the South African army. So it was an army that was full of black soldiers sent from Cuba, and they beat this white South African army, and it gave a lot of hope to the people of South Africa.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is that mass movements, eventually the governments will listen to. So just as the apartheid regime in South Africa collapsed, hopefully the same thing will happen in Israel, and the people of Palestine will be free. So all I can do in my role is to make people aware of the situation. That's all I can do. And
Yeah.
if I don't do it, then I'm complicit. So I'm hoping it will.
Yeah.
I'm hoping things
Yeah.
will give up.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I saw you had a few images of your work on Instagram. Well, you have a lot of your images on Instagram, but you wrote "My homeless friend in London." But how do you approach someone? Aren't most of them feeling a form of shame? You just said no, but
Yeah,
how do they feel to tell you their story? Because I mean, you do not get just homeless. There is a reason behind it. How open can they be? Do they trust you enough to do that? Because you need the stories,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of my friends ended up on the streets, homeless, and these are people from really good backgrounds. You know, these are people you wouldn't associate with being homeless. They had great parents. They had money, but they ended up on the streets for one reason or another. A lot of it through drugs, um, and they had trauma they were trying to get over, and they helped themselves by taking drugs really to get away from that trauma. Um, when I see someone on the streets, I don't see them as a homeless person. I just see them as a friend. You know, even if I don't know them. Um, there was a survey done in the US. I don't know if you know this survey, and it was a big survey amongst homeless people, and they asked three questions as a homeless person. If you offered three things, one would be money, second one would be alcohol, the third one would be conversation. And which one of those three options would you take if you're a homeless person? And I think it was something like 90% of the homeless people in the US who took this survey said all they wanted was a conversation. They wanted to be treated as a normal human being.
Mm.
They don't want to be invisible anymore. You know, they're on the streets, they're fighting for their lives, but they're still part of the human race. They still deserve respect, and they still deserve to have a conversation with. And that's what I do. I talk to homeless people. I don't see them as having any shame or anything like that. I don't see that.
Mm-hmm.
I see them as people that I admire.
Yeah. They
And
must feel that. They must
yeah,
feel that. Because
yeah,
I think, and I've noticed that. I mean, you know, Liverpool Street Station, and I
yeah,
walked there and so incredibly busy. And this older elderly woman was walking there. She only had a little plastic bag, and she clamped to my arm. Do you have some money for me? And I said, I'm sorry, I have to go to the to pin it
yeah,
to get it out of the ATM. And so I did. And I actually thought I give her tenner, then I have a tenner for myself. I have something in my pocket. But then
yeah,
I ended up with a whole £20. I had like, there's more where this comes from. And I gave her the whole 20. I've never seen someone so happy and so grateful for what I did, because now she could take a shower. And I
yeah,
had like, when you just think that could have been me,
yeah,
your whole perspective starts to change, because
yeah,
it doesn't matter what background you have, you can come into a situation and be there. So yeah, but I also see that a lot of people go around them, don't want to know anything.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's what I so admire in your work. And what admired me in that one David was, or David?
Yeah.
Yeah, his eyes, the way you painted his eyes. And I think in all the portraits I saw, it were the eyes that speak most to me. Because, yeah, I always say the eyes are the windows of our soul.
Yeah.
Do you emphasize on that?
Yeah. To me, the eyes are the heartbeat of the painting. Really, the
Mm,
eyes. I want the eyes to scream. I want the eyes to shout. I want them to drag you in. And I can only paint someone's eyes if I know their story. You
yeah.
know, if I don't know their story, the eyes tend to be flat. So the eyes are full of emotion, and hopefully their story, their emotions, their fear, their anger, their love, it all comes out
Mm,
in their eyes
yeah.
on the canvas. And that's what I aim
Yeah.
to do.
But I have to tell you, what I noticed in the eyes is not anger. It's not fear.
No,
It is still, I wouldn't even, I don't like the word resilience, but it is there.
yeah,
But what I see is strength. And I see a type of love coming out.
yeah, yeah,
And that can be either because they have that conversation with you and they feel
right,
that love,
yeah,
or it is, but that's what I see in the eyes, very strong.
yeah. Thank you. Well, that's really what I want to try and do. I want to, as I said, I want to show all that emotion. There is a huge amount of resilience. There's a huge amount of hope. There's a huge amount of pride in people that I talk to on the streets. And they have every right to have that pride and that resilience and that hope.
Yeah.
You know, they're living through tough times, but they're not giving up. They're on their own. They've got no one. They've got no family. Just imagine that situation when you are on your own. You're on the streets. You're surrounded by fear all the time.
Yeah.
You can't relax, but yet they can force a smile. They can
Yeah.
talk. They can have a conversation. They can laugh. To me, that's mind blowing. You know, I have my problems, but nowhere near the problems that they have. And
No.
sometimes I don't want to laugh. Sometimes I don't want to smile. Sometimes I just
Yeah.
want to cry and hide.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my admiration is
Definitely.
just so strong towards
Yeah.
the
And
people
I've
I
seen
work with.
that, to be honest. I've seen that when I was studying in Amsterdam. I've seen it because I was sitting on a balcony in the famous Vondel Park on a restaurant there with a friend, and we drank a glass of wine. And then it became late. And then the people who normally are wandering around the street, they gather there and they sleep there. And I remember that one didn't show up, and they all got worried, and
Yeah,
they all step up and go and look for that person. Have you seen? Have you seen? Have you seen?
yeah,
So they take care of each other also.
yeah, yeah. I agree. I do agree with that. There is a community there.
Yeah,
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 and that's really important.
yeah. Because you can't be really all alone. I
Mm,
mean, it's even dangerous on the streets.
yeah. Oh
But
yes.
yeah, so you showed also paintings of portraits of people in a war situation. And to
Yeah.
what extent are those people in a war situation also something of an emotional war within you, and maybe within all of us?
Um, I, I do feel that when I paint a painting, um, it the emotion is me and the emotion is the sitter. You know, it's a mixture.
Hmm.
It's not just the sitter's emotion. It's about how I see that. It's about my trauma, my emotion. I don't want to be self-indulgent, but that's the way I see a painting. You know, if someone buys a painting of mine, then they're buying a part of me. They're buying a
Hmm.
part of the sitter.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I've suffered a lot with mental health issues myself, and that does come out in my work. I think, you know, it's very
Yeah,
traumatic. It's very it's very raw. And then when I see people that have been through so much, that have been through war at such a young age, who have lost parents, who have lost limbs. You know, I'm going to the Congo next year to paint portraits of kids who have suffered through war. You know, to see their pain, to see actually in their eyes, although they're smiling at me and they're laughing, but to see that pain in their eyes, that look that you'll never forget, and that pain will always be there. It yeah, it really rips your heart open.
Yeah.
So I yeah, but there is a battle in my mind. There is an emotional battle going on, and that plays out on the canvas as well. You know, so yeah, it is. I do agree what you say. It's we're all having these battles inside. We're all fighting our own little war. But when you see what people go through, it's just it really is soul destroying.
Yeah, and that must be at the same time you must feel like if they can go through that, then I can go through my shit.
Yeah, yeah,
In a way.
exactly. Yeah, it's very humbling.
Yeah.
You know, I remember going. I remember going away, and I went to one place that was hit really hard by war, and saw these kids, and these kids were the happiest kids I've ever met, and yet they had nothing. They had literally they didn't have anything. They didn't even have a house to live in, and yet I went back to the UK the next day, and I went to it's like a village fair fete in my local village, and you could just contrast. You know,
Yeah.
these people have everything, you
Yeah.
know, and yet they just seem so sad, and their eyes were so grey. And yet, the day
Mm.
before, I was in a war zone, and I saw so much happiness, so much
Yeah.
laughter. Uh, it is really humbling, and I've learned so much from people in that environment.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine that. I
Yeah,
can imagine that. Yeah, and the world at the moment is beyond anything. And we just had a little talk about that, but it is beyond anything I ever witnessed in my life.
yeah.
And maybe because I do not paint people in war situations, but you have seen so many disrupted societies. How does it impact you as an artist?
Um, a lot of people do ask me that when they say to me, "Do you not feel that one day all this is going to catch up with you? All this emotion is going to catch up, and you're going to have some sort of breakdown?" Because I have seen a lot. You know, I've spoke to a lot of people who are suffering massively. Um, First of all, I see sadness in those people, but then it makes me incredibly angry to see that
Mm-hmm.
they're going through such suffering, which is a result really of if it comes down to it, when you look at it, it's a result of the greed,
Yeah.
the power of the West. You know what our countries, my country in particular, has done over the years. This legacy of colonialism,
Yeah.
racism. You know, so yeah, it's incredibly sad seeing all of this, but also it makes me so angry that
Mm-hmm.
this is still going on in our world. Most of these wars they should never have started. They started because of greed.
Yeah.
They started because of racism.
Yeah.
And I think at the moment in me, that's the dominant emotion. It's anger. It's anger, and I can't stop. I can't stop painting because I feel so much anger. And if I
Mm-hmm.
stop
Mm-hmm.
painting, then I would explode with that anger.
Yeah.
So maybe one day I'll probably have, you know, the sadness will hit me. Probably it will one day, but at the moment there's no room for it. It's full of anger, you know, and that hopefully comes out again in my painting.
Yeah. I think that that you have to. You
Yeah,
have to. I mean, because you need to continue painting. I think this is one of the most important things for artists. And also, you have something that really spoke to me, particularly is the Scramble for Africa, a painting where you challenge the everlasting flat rhetoric that says
yeah,
Africa is so poor, and to change that to Africa is rich, but we steal its wealth. And I am so happy to read that because that is exactly what it is. And I am very interested in how many um, turn a blind eye, even to this day.
Yeah.
And when it comes to African people in old master paintings, how visually intelligent do you think people are in the Western world? Have they grown a blind spot? Is it arrogance that is conditioned? What are your thoughts about that? Because you see that. I mean, black people in old master paintings are often not seen.
Yeah. You're from Holland?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm from the UK, and I feel that the history of my country is built on colonialism and racism. And our politicians, they say now, well, those days are gone, but that's not the case.
It's not true. It's not true.
And that colonialism and that racism, that mindset is deeply ingrained in our society. It's been there for hundreds of years. And so you can't just switch it off. It's there. And, I don't see myself as racist at all. Of course not. I deplore that. I deplore racism, but it's all around me. It's ingrained. I see people that they say they're not racist, but in a way they are. They don't see it, but they are. They feel that we live in this Western society which we're very rich, and there's the people in the global South are very poor. So there is a huge blind spot there. There's a huge arrogance. And when I go to places in the global South, when I go to countries that have been decimated by our greed, our colonialism over the years, our imperialism, I just see love and empathy. I just learn a huge lesson in life. I see people that have suffered, and yet they're still there. They're still fighting, and that suffering is down to a lot of what we've done in the West. And the good thing is, in the world now, and especially in the global South, countries such as Brazil, who have elected Lula da Silva as a president, and other countries such as Colombia now, they're putting their people first. They're sticking up for themselves. We live in a unipolar world, unfortunately. We live in a world that's dominated by the US. But I think things are changing. The global South
they have to
has a bigger
change.
voice.
Yeah, they have to change. And it's the same. I mean, don't underestimate the Netherlands. They had their fair share in colonialism, for sure. Absolutely. Also racism. I just had a very big discussion about a so-called tradition that's here in the Netherlands. It's called Santa Claus, and it has Black Pete's, Black Moors, and they also have a very nasty way to give them a role. It's also black up, like blackface, which is a tradition that stems from early modern times. So we're not different. And I always say you're either a racist or you're not. So when you embrace those traditions, you're a racist.
Yeah.
You are. So you can't be in the middle, a little bit racist and a little bit not, because you're a racist or you're not.
Yeah.
And we need to be very, very clear about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. And I paint a lot of African people I have a lot of African people in my work.
Is that your painting behind you?
Yes.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Thank you. It is apart because it's 80 by 100 centimeters.
Yeah. Is it to do with the refugees?
No. This is a self-portrait. Okay.
Yes, really stunning.
Together with the one I deeply love. But so what can we as artists do more to bring awareness to suffering, to social inequality, to people who suffered through war, etc., etc.? So things you do, things that beyond my commissions I do.
Yeah.
What can we do more? Because I have to be very brutal honest. I think a lot of artists are very self-indulgent.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And I don't think, there was a time when art was used by power. That happened in the early modern times for the Medici, etc. It happened in the Cold War, the CIA, who
Yeah.
has brought the brilliant book about that, Who Paid the Piper,
Yeah.
to bring abstract expressionism here. So art and artists were used
Yeah.
for political reasons. And I think now we need to step in and start using our abilities to bring awareness to situations that need to change.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I agree. It, from my experience, I've had a real fight with the art world, and I'm an outsider, so I'm not in this art world, and I'm happy to be an outsider. I was told by so many people in galleries that, okay, we'll show your work's great, but we don't want you to paint a homeless person. We don't want you to paint a political portrait. And I always remember someone gave me some advice once a long time ago, another artist, and the artist said to me, you must always paint directly, a direct line from your heart to the canvas. You can't deviate from that. It has to be a
Yeah.
straight line.
Yeah.
And I live by that, so maybe I don't get my work in galleries, maybe I don't win awards, but at least I'm true and honest to myself. And to me, art has to be from your heart. So my advice for everyone is to paint from their heart. Don't deviate. Don't deviate, because if you're outside of the art world, then you can look in, you can see what's happening. It's best to be on the outside than inside of it. And also, this day and age, we have the main media, especially here in the UK. I think its role is there to try and keep people asleep. And I think now artists, our role must be to wake people up. So shout from your heart, use the paintbrush, use the pen, use whatever you want, but be true to yourself and keep fighting, keep shouting, because there's so much power in art. There is, as you've explained there, and power and art will eventually change the world. I really believe in that.
Yeah.
So if you ever ask yourself a question, okay, what do I want to paint? Well, it's simple, just paint from your heart.
Yeah. I totally agree.
Yeah.
And be less self-indulgent.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
I mean, in the end, it is about we have that power. So we have to take that power and use it.
Yeah.
Not to our advantage alone, but to at least two people around you that can celebrate it and that has advantage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that it's very dear to me. I'm sure it's dear to you. I've got projects that I'm doing next year, which are, for me, these are things that people aren't aware of in the world. And if I can use my art to raise awareness of that, for example, I touched upon Cuba. How Cuba send their doctors all over the world to help people. Even when the COVID virus was going on at the start, at the epicenter in Italy, Cuba sent doctors to that country to help. Cuba sent an army to fight the apartheid regime. So I'm going over to Cuba to paint. I'm doing 4 series of work. I'm painting veterans who fought in the Angolan War. I'm painting doctors who have been sent all over the world, who are heroes. I'm painting the LGBTQ community, because Cuba have introduced a family code which is incredibly advanced, and it gives so many rights to so many different people. It's fantastic what they're doing over there. So this art, hopefully my art can raise awareness of those issues. help raise awareness of issues, and the mainstream media have painted Cuba as a country which is dark and backwards. And so that's an example of how I can use my art to help wake people up, rather than the mainstream media have used it to send people to sleep.
Yeah, that's propaganda.
Yeah.
That's propaganda. And I know how that's used. They groom even journalists into that, to speak for the government, to bring out so that they can perpetrate the violence towards that other country that they do not agree with. So yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah.
James, I wish you all the luck in the world. I want to thank you for being here with me. Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you. So it really is my pleasure. I love talking to people about my work, and it's been a real honor. So thank you so much.
Thank you.